So, what is the social cost of capitalism? Can it even have such? Not according to classical exchange theory, which equates economy only with the satisfaction of demand and the exchange of value to meet that demand. Anything outside this equation is not considered to be wealth and is therefore deliberately excluded as a sustaining factor of production. This self-serving definition of cost, restricted to returns and exchange values, becomes circular reasoning justifying a market-based society, excluding everything not meeting its standard as irrelevant, if not irrational. Market theory has us believe that markets are self-correcting, all-embracing entities that continually find their own equilibrium if left alone to do so. This is seen as an outgrowth of the law of natural liberty. But in practice, this is not the way the world works. Human societies and the natural environment are not reducible to the market and its exchange laws. By ignoring these so-called extraneous factors, the free market society, when literally applied as the von Mises and Friedman crowd demand, not only makes human society unlivable for most of its members, but cannibalizes human society, the natural world, and ultimately itself. The natural costs of profit-maximizing use are obvious: air and water pollution, the wasting of life-sustaining finite resources, again, such as water, or of industrial and natural resources like oil, coal, timber, and the land itself. The Dust Bowl of 1930s North America was one of the worst modern examples of resource destruction through rapacious exploitation. The spread of the Sahara is another, along with the destruction of the Earth's last major forest reserves in the Amazon and in the Malay Peninsula. And of course, the destruction of natural animal life in the process, along with climate change fostered by this extraction, production, and consumption. The earth belongs to man, meaning some men, and is to be used for the profit of those men. End of conversation, and these men cannot see the difference between use and rape. Nothing metaphorical here. It is rape, an act of violent conquest. And of course, with all rape comes denial of the man-made holocaust of global warming and climate change. And thus we see the class nature of market exploitation, from academic theory to boardroom practice to legislation. And the human costs? Ensuring public health of the base population that is to sustain this process is irrelevant unless it is put on a market basis. In comes Thomas Malthus to assure us that high mortality among the lower orders is necessary to achieve market equilibrium in nature and society. Education is to follow the same logic. Unless there is profit to be made in teaching the young and profit from their knowledge, they have no inherent right to it. High unemployment is seen as necessary to maximize efficiency. What happens to those redundant persons is not the business of the market, but of course they don't go away. The sharecropper dispossessed by the tractor and mechanical picker goes to the ghetto in Cleveland and Detroit to fester in uselessness. And if he causes trouble, well, as Ebenezer Scrooge, that master of market theory, put it, are there no prisons? Which of course are also to be run on market principles. Giving such redundant persons handouts is held to be unproductive and a drain on society, but the processes that made them redundant and useless is considered productive and efficient. Square that circle if you can, because the entire sustainability of the marketized globe depends on overcoming it. In fact, the entire process disproves Malthus' theory of overpopulation, because it's not the increase of the ghetto residents of Cleveland and Detroit per se that caused their poverty, but the mass destruction of livelihood with no profit incentive to replace it with new sources of productive employment. The concentration of private wealth at the top increased in proportion to the creation of hereditary poverty and unemployment at the bottom in America's cities. A process which is being replicated globally until we can speak of a ghetto planet, or a world divided between those who live in slums and those who do not. Increasingly, this economic Sahara is eating at most of us as surely as the desert is gobbling the green fields of the south. The crime which comes from this mass poverty is not mere collateral damage, but the reflection of the market society itself. The drug wars of Mexico rose in parallel proportion to neoliberal economics that dismantled the social side of the Mexican state, destroyed the last traces of Mexico's rural economy, and crushed workers' rights. The rise of a small, upper-middle-class island in a festering swamp of poverty has created a mocking counter-economy, based on the illicit consumer demands of this elite, and a route of opportunity for the victims of the free market, one that has erupted to destroy any sustainable human society whatsoever, exactly as libertarian market theory demands. In Mexico, the wolf has dropped the sheep costume and stands exposed for what he is. The Mexican citizen is just meat for the eating. These are the social costs that have no place in exchange theory and are erased out of the equation, but they will destroy the market society and human society with it. Cutthroat competition for resources leads to wasteful replication and overproduction, which depresses the market value and profit, which is the alleged purpose. The creation of equally wasteful wants through propaganda, advertising, wasteful wants that becomes standards of living to which we're entitled, the waste of science and research and technology if someone can't make a profit off of it, or holding it back if it threatens profits. Suppose someone did develop a cure for cancer. You can bet that it would not only be priced out of the hands of the average sufferer by the market mechanism, but its production might even be squelched altogether if powerful market interests in the medical and pharmaceutical field are threatened by reducing their profit-generating treatments and procedures. But, so, what about the wastefulness of state economies? Look at what Khrushchev did to Central Asia in the 1960s with his Virgin Lands program. There's an active rape for you. Politically correct geneticists like Trofim Lysenko turned whole regions into wastelands. Cotton production drained resources and poisoned the land, the population, creating mass genetic deformities. To say nothing of the famines created by state-managed or mismanaged mass production, you have to read James Scott's Seeing Like a State to see how planning from above to remake man and nature has led to the blind destruction of both. Yet, it's true that not all rapists are capitalists, but try finding a successful capitalist who is not. And capitalism is the essence of the world in which you now live, not the USSR of the mid-20th century. Capitalism is the very agency that developed this estrangement from nature, in both private corporate bureaucracy and the state. In developed capitalist economies, the state has been a business partner, not an adversary. As one humble example, the reconstruction of Iraq was not just a series of State Department bumbles by bureaucrats, lost in their statist rat maze and doing no good for anyone. The society of Iraq was deliberately deconstructed, first by profit-generating high-tech war, so that it could be rebuilt by private sector contractors using state subsidy. The privatization of Iraq, through the colonial state dictatorship of Viceroy Paul Bremer, a free market man if ever there was one, highlights the error of viewing state and market as separate entities. Khrushchev and the Koch brothers are spiritual business partners because they embody a fundamental attitude toward Earth and society. Expropriation, exploitation, squeezing out every last trace of value through undervaluing the natural world and the humans who live in it. This circle was finally squared in modern China. What infuriates Western elites is not China's human rights model, but that they are not dominating the Chinese market and subjugating it to their own. China's rise, and the rise of the Third World in general, is a direct challenge to the entire capitalist order of the West in the reproduction of natural and social waste in a finite world. Economic science, for the benefit of real people living in the real environment of a real world, will have to pass beyond the confines of 17th and 18th century philosophy. The situation for global and human survival is too serious to be left to cranks and elite think tanks telling rich men that greed is good, more is better, that there is no tomorrow, and payday is only for the little people. The social value of people, all people, as people, of nature for its own sake, must become the highest priority, or the progeny of even Milton Friedman will live on a cold, dead, poisoned planet. Who's that on my YouTube line? All right. Hello? Comrade Trofim Lysenko? The famous Soviet geneticist who exposed bourgeois Mendelian genetics as a capitalist plot. You resent my linking you with the likes of bourgeois social economists like Thomas Malthus in the same video? Well, I say credit where it's due. Anything that can cause suffering, want, and devastation to make the powerful more powerful and feel good about their power in themselves. That's what the world's really about, isn't it? And always worth the cost. Why, in fact, there really are no costs when measured by what really matters. What other value can the world and the humans in it possibly have?